Hey, Mike Caruso with the Fisherman Magazine. Today I'm with Aaron Bleeker of Atlantic Marine Electrical Service. These guys install Seakeeper units. Seakeeper units are really one of the most technologically advanced aftermarket products, I guess you could call them, that you could put into a boat to reduce the amount of rocking and rolling a boat does. We're going to do a deep dive here about what it takes to install this product in your boat and what the net benefit is. And this is really an incredible benefit when you think about how your boat can be transformed into a very stable platform. So let's dive right in.
It's using the gyroscopic principle, the same idea that holds a children's spinning top upright, or even a small gyroscope that you might get for a science project or something like that. When you try to move that gyroscope, it fights you back in 90 degrees to the force that you put on it.
Yeah.
So essentially, that's what Seakeeper is doing. They're using that principle to keep the boat from rocking back and forth.
Right.
So the way that the Seakeeper works, the best way to describe it is, if you look at it like a top, for example, if you spin a top on a table, it wants to hold itself upright because of centrifugal forces on the outside. It's called angular momentum. Big difference here is since it's gimbaled on the port and starboard side and it's adhered to the hull, that precession motion that you see here, when it's moving back and forth, those angular momentum or those forces are being transferred to the hull. So the best way to kind of view it is the boat becomes the top. It wants to stay upright the entire time. But we have our active control, which controls the precession of the gyro. So with that precession rate being controlled, we can control the amount of angular momentum per the wave period to keep the boat stable at all times.
Okay, so we are now rolling without the Seakeeper on.
Yep.
And
Now
see, we've got a pretty good rock. You can see Seakeeper just kicked in and it just completely stopped all the motion. If you've ever been on a boat with a Seakeeper and done the before and after, with it turned on and with it turned off, it is a very significant reduction, and we're talking 90% reduction of rocking. Okay, and so that is that's what you're buying, and that's what we're talking about, and that's what Seakeeper is known for, and that's what no one else does. Let's get into the discovery phase of how you're going to plan out the job.
So if you came to me with a particular boat, the first thing we would do is go and have a quick site visit. Unless we've done that boat before, and Seakeeper has definitely got a vast knowledge database at this point. Yeah. But for the most part, we'll go to the boat, we'll take some measurements of the hull. We want some waterline measurements at the beam and length, of course. We need the displacement weight of the vessel loaded. Yeah. And then at that point, then we start fishing for space. Okay. Is there a hatch that allows us to place the unit without totally destroying access to everything else that you need to get to in the boat? Because that's important to us. We're installers and we're service, so we're not just going to drop something in that cuts off access to A, the Seakeeper itself, or B, other things like fuel filters or who knows what else is in the place. The best thing for us to do is go physically look at it. Once we determine there's space, then we send that information that we do measurements and weight and stuff to Seakeeper. Their team is really good at providing what they call a roll reduction prediction, which will tell us how many degrees of roll reduction at 80%. So
you're saying once you've done an initial assessment, you get the folks, the engineers,
absolutely,
Seakeeper involved to assist with the planning of the installation.
Yeah. Well, not the planning itself. They assist with providing data to the customer. Okay. So once we've evaluated your boat, Seakeeper will come back with a graph that says this particular boat will get you, let's say, just for example, 86% at 15 degrees of pitch from side to side. Okay. And that's a roll reduction of 86%. And they're looking for minimums of 80% because they want you to have the best possible experience. They don't want boats out there that don't give a wow when they turn on the Seakeeper.
And it really is.
So if you're going under the deck, which is probably, I'd say 80%, maybe 90% of what we wind up doing, we find space below deck. We're looking for structure, hull structure, stringers, things like that we can adhere to get the structure we need for the Seakeeper. Yeah. There's no, Seakeeper has some very specific guidelines about engineering-wise what it should be, but there's no real way that they say to arrive to that point.
Yeah.
So you can kind of, as an installer, you have to take a little bit of your experience and
Sure.
and just work it into that.
Okay.
But we've been doing it long enough now that we know what we need structure-wise.
Mm-hmm.
So there's usually, for us, we usually use aluminum fixtures that we have crafted by Sal Marine, is really good right
Okay.
here locally.
Okay.
We grind and to accommodate it, and then we adhere it to the vessel.
There's a base structure that the Seakeeper unit will sit in. Is that what you're referring to?
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like installing a third engine. If you had inboards, I kind of, when people ask at boat shows,
Sure.
I say, think of it as putting a new engine in the boat.
Right.
So it kind of needs that same structure, that same fastening. So we look, smaller boats, we look to put it on center line because the unit doesn't matter whether it doesn't care whether it's off center or not. So,
Oh, really?
Right, it doesn't matter. And we tend to want to keep it from midship to aft in that area. We don't want it too far forward. But that's, for smaller boats, it's important to keep it somewhat centered just because of the weight. On a 30-foot boat, 400 pounds all the way to port or starboard is going to make a big difference, where
Yeah.
as it doesn't matter so much.
And the unit will work harder if it's not, I would think. Would it not
No,
work?
the effect is the same. The effect is the same.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
really interesting and amazing, really, the physics of it. But
Yeah.
center line is where we want it for the most part. But we have done them, and sometimes you could do smaller units. If you have a bigger boat where you couldn't fit one larger unit in the center, say, you can do two smaller ones off to each side. Once we get our mounting, we call it a foundation. Once our mounting foundation is in place, then the unit will sit on top of that and be bolted to it. And again, Seakeeper has some very specific ways that it needs to be done, involving helicoils and things like that.
Some have gone to an above deck leaning post that is actually something that Seakeeper also manufactures. But this is an above deck installation, and for some it's the right way to go, isn't it?
Correct. If space is a problem below deck, we can often put it on deck, and we can use Seakeeper's leaning post assembly, or we can actually, there are some boats where we can sort of take certain things out of the existing leaning post to make space for the Seakeeper underneath. The big factor there is that the deck has the structure to accommodate, because then you're relying on the deck itself to
Right.
adhere the unit.
Right.
So those things we find out with engineering, and we work with the boat companies, and sometimes, for example, some of the smaller lobster boats, they tend to be very narrow in the back because the keel and they flare up toward the transom,
Right.
so they're shallow when you open the deck.
Yeah.
When you look down, so there's not enough room. So we've actually considered doing on deck with a fish box type mounting system over the top, so that they would still be able to have the utility of all their workstation on top of the Seakeeper itself. So we can reinforce that deck from underneath at that point very simply.
These develop heat.
Yeah.
You literally have a spinning
Spinning
flywheel
inside of an evacuated
which
speed.
generates heat,
Yeah.
and so you're drawing seawater in.
Correct. There's seawater that comes through and cools the unit through a glycol heat exchanger system.
Okay.
So everything that's important in the unit is saved from saltwater exposure. The heat exchanger does all that work.
Got
So
it.
we just have a simple, it's almost like an air conditioning type raw water flow. It's just a simple pump with a pickup sea strainer and through the Seakeeper and overboard.
So there'll be a
discharge.
through hull port.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, both intake and
Yeah.
discharge. The SK2 right behind me here is 414 pounds.
Okay.
So that unit will do boats up to about the 32 foot range.
Okay.
And that's not set in stone. It also depends on the boat's displacement and some other measurements to do with the center of gravity and stuff like that. So here we have the heart of the electrical system for the Seakeeper 2. We start with the battery charger. This charger will keep the Seakeeper batteries fully charged and also compensate for the load while spooling up. We have a connection box essentially with an on-off switch and a breaker necessary for the Seakeeper itself. And over here we have a breaker box that has two breakers in it, one for the onboard charger that was already on the boat, and then the second breaker for the shore power for the Seakeeper charger. And that's essentially the main part of the electrical system. So here we have our Seakeeper 2. at its final resting place. And this is essentially the project complete. Basic steps to get to this point were assessing the vessel to make sure the thing would fit, and then obviously measuring access and so forth. Once we knew we could get it in, we had to prepare the area, adhere our mounting plates, and then unfortunately on this vessel we had to disassemble. That happens. We had to disassemble the Seakeeper 2 to get it in place, and then reassemble it on its foundation. And that's the basics. Aside from electricals and things like that, those are the most important factors that we had to take into account to get this in.
Okay, Aaron and his team have completed the installation on the 31-foot Robalo dual console. It is an amazingly professional job that these guys did. It's clean. They really laid out everything perfectly. When you are considering a project of this nature, it's definitely not a do-it-yourself type of project. You need the experts. Aaron and his team at Atlantic Marine Electrical in Huntington or Freeport, of course, they could go to your location as well. These guys know what they're doing. They've done it before. So if you're considering the Seakeeper installation, any boat between 23 foot and up are candidates. Give these guys a call. They'll assess the situation and the installation for you guys, and really make an incredible improvement to the performance of your boat. So I'm Mike Caruso with the Fisherman Magazine here with Aaron Bleeker, and give that Seakeeper a try. Thanks for watching.